This is a massive failure. Writing this off is throwing away tens of millions of dollars of work. Okay? Straight up. It's akin to lighting $10 million on fire.
Let me just quickly ask you on Gaza. When you heard the President of the United States talking about turning the Gaza Strip, I mean, getting 2 million Palestinians out, I mean, as anybody who has read history or the region or been watching for the last year, did you think this was a joke at first? I mean, can you believe?
Almost. Look. One could say that, Anderson. On the other hand, given the suffering that the Palestinian people have gone through under Netanyahu's brutal war, which has killed some at least 45,000, injured over 100,000, mostly women and children, the idea that the President of the United States is going to say to these people, oh, by the way, you're going to have to leave the place where you live because we are going to build something equivalent to the French Riviera.
Well, also the thugs of Hamas are still there. I mean, it's not as if they have gone.
Yeah, to say, but even that's right. So, you know, and as you just discussed a moment ago, how do you do that? Are American troops involved? How much money is being spent? But the idea of telling 2.2 million people who live in an area, you're gone, we're going to build a French Riviera here so my billionaire friends can enjoy the beautiful view. It is, to say the least, preposterous. It ain't going to happen.
To the fallout from President Trump saying that the U.S. would...
Every aspect of this admin is so... It's just... I think it's Trump playing hardball, as always. What Trump says and what Trump will do are two entirely separate things. That doesn't stop the fact that he is actively normalizing and genuinely wants to do this, by the way. Like, make no mistake. I think Trump, if given the opportunity, would love to do this. Will he be able to do it? I don't know. Not chat being pro-Hamas. Crazy. Brother, it is not October 7 any longer. I don't know what you are talking about here. Okay? Like, if you can't comprehend why people would resist against the Israeli apartheid after 16 months of genocide, as the American government that allowed Israel to do this by offering the munitions to do it, while also simultaneously talking currently about the fact that there will be mass ethnic cleansing, a mass population transfer scheme on this existing territory. Like, and you're still like, well, what about Hamas? You're out of your mind, dude. Get a new point, please. Hamas is but a name, okay? That's it. That's all it is. It's an expression. It's an expression of Palestinian emancipation. That's it. That's what it is. If it's no longer Hamas, it's something else, okay? It's gonna be something else. And in the past, it was something different than Hamas. It was the PLO. Something that I have maintained that was written about on Fox News as well was the fact that Hamas is the lesser of two evils between Hamas and Israel. It's just the truth. Yeah, I know I covered this earlier, that Egyptian diplomats came out and said Biden said the exact same thing. Biden quietly made the exact same proposals that they refused to abide by in terms of mass ethnic transfer, which is the least shocking revelation of all time. The major difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, at least on this issue, is that Donald Trump says the quiet part out loud. But American foreign policy, as I've stated, is uniparty. Yeah, 972 Magazine's new coverage also shows that after using bunker buster bombs, they gassed the tunnels and most likely killed hostages in the process. I remember one of the family members in Israel of one of the hostages that was killed was actually demanding an additional investigation, a third-party investigation into how one of the hostages had died. And her suspicion, if I recall correctly, was that he was gassed. Now, 972 Magazine's investigations show that there is a very high likelihood that that is what happened. From 1 year ago, a hostage mother says toxic gas from Israeli bombs killed her son. Is she right? This is from January 31st, 2024, from an entire year ago.
Take over Gaza. Our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, tracking this for us, also from the White House. Mary, good morning.
Whit, good morning. Well, after the president declared that the U.S. would take over Gaza and that the Palestinian people would be permanently...
Why are you even making what comparison? What comparison did I make? I didn't make a comparison. I just told you what happened. I don't even know what you're talking about. You knew what you were insinuating? Are you talking about making a Holocaust comparison? If that's what you're thinking that I'm insinuating. In this circumstance, I was not. Having said that, yes, I have voluntarily made comparisons to Israel and Nazi Germany numerous times over. You must be new here if you think I'm afraid of making such comparisons. Zionism is a fascist movement very similar in its expression of violence to the Nazi movement. Okay? We're talking about Israel using chemical weapons and potentially gas on Israeli citizens that are hostages. That is just what is reported on in the news. It seems like you have issues with what Israel is doing, or maybe you have issues when someone talks about what Israel is doing. If you consider what Israel is doing, which is genocide, to be very different than what the Nazi Germany did, I don't know what to tell you. They also did a genocide. I think you have an issue with just what the truth is. It's not that you have an issue with me. It's that you have an issue with the truth. That's it. You can say crazy about it all day, every day, but it won't change the truth.
Relocated. The White House this morning is struggling to explain what this plan would look like, how this would actually work. Now, this proposal has sparked international outrage, and now some administration officials are seeming to dial back the president's language. The president said bluntly that it was his intention to remove Palestinians from Gaza permanently. But here at the White House, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt now says the relocation would be temporary to allow Gaza to rebuild, though the administration estimates that could take 10 to 15 years. And she insisted the U.S. would not be paying for that rebuilding. And while the president initially said he was willing to use the U.S. military if necessary, when I asked Leavitt whether American troops would forcibly remove Palestinians or be fighting on the ground in Gaza, she said the president has not committed to troops in the region. And in fact, just now, the president posting that, quote, no soldiers by the U.S. would be needed, saying stability for the region would reign. Now, the White House was also pressed on the president's decades of criticism of U.S. entanglements and conflicts abroad. But the White House says that the U.S. would not be entangled in the Middle East through this plan, even though the president said, quote, the U.S.
Yeah, it's just weird because we are already entangled in it. Because without our support, without our bombs and munitions, for example, Israel wouldn't be able to destroy as many parts of Gaza as they have. So to say that we are not entangled in this is ridiculous. Man falsely poses an immigration agent and traps Latino man in a car. I hope he goes to jail. Doesn't Israel have their own arsenal, though? Yes. It's simply not enough to maintain a permanent bombing campaign that reduces the entirety of the Gaza Strip to rubble.
U.S. would own Gaza and would be responsible for dismantling all of the unexploded bombs and weapons there. George.
So we're going to own Gaza, even though we're not going to send any money, we're not going to send troops, and all of the other Arab nations said they're not prepared to take Palestinians.
That is exactly where we stand right now. The president is making this sweeping outline, calling for this plan without explaining how he is going to pull this.
I'm not trying to call you all, I promise. But I thought of this from a philosophical position. I feel both have merit. Do you feel in your position that it is more important to call out detractor talking points and demonstrate how to dismantle them, or to clarify positions for folks who are in the same headspace as you promote? It's both. I do both. Sometimes I do more of the latter. Other times I do more of the former. It's important to do both.
Off. They are not committing to putting troops on the ground. They are not committing to spending any money, and they still have not explained by what authority the president would be able to take over this sovereign territory. George.
Mary Bruce, thanks very much.
At the top of the program, we laid out the administration's rewriting of what the...
Yeah. The reason why I talked about the previous administration's actions earlier when talking about Gaza and how the Trump administration's actions are going to differ from like the previous one was because of this. Because everyone in the United States of America always likes to revert the conversation back to an appropriate vector of anger, drama. Okay? For YouTube slop tubers, that can be drama surrounding content creators. And for obviously liberals who have a vested interest in defending the failure of a candidate and a failure of a campaign that just took place that lost to Donald Trump the second time around, Their goal is to obviously deflect blame away from the Democratic Party's ineptitude and away from the campaign specifically, back to a target that everyone can get mad about. Now, it can be the third-party voters or the Bernie bros, or in this circumstance, the radical Muslims in Dearborn, okay? It is their fault that Kamala Harris lost. Very frustrating process, considering that they did play a role in Kamala Harris's defeat, especially in Michigan. They played a very important role, but that issue is not up to the voters. That responsibility does not fall on the voters. Votes are not earned. We exist in a theoretical democracy where votes are supposed to be, votes are not entitled for. They're supposed to be earned. Sorry. Okay? That's the foundational principle of a democratic administration, a democratic form of governance, is that your elected representatives are supposed to represent you. Okay? And in that process, voters are going to extract concessions. But for some reason, people love blaming voters in general and never the campaign. People also love blaming third-party voters specifically. Ironically enough, third-party voters still could not make up for the margin of defeat in many of the states that Kamala Harris lost. So why do Democrats still make this point? Well, because again, there's a little bit of that the truth doesn't matter attitude on the liberal side of the spectrum as well. This is a very dangerous game to play. This is a major issue for me. The fact that on the right, we've just gone into full tilt denialism and desperately rushing towards alternative reasons that are not born out of the data and just simply hysterical. And liberals play a little bit of that as well on their end. Not good. Okay?
The president said last night about taking over Gaza and remaking it as a Riviera of the Middle East, his words. Regardless of what the people around him say he said it all on camera, and millions of people saw it, including Arab Americans, many of whom voted for him. More from CNN's Jason Carroll now in Dearborn, Michigan.
Days before the last presidential election, Donald Trump was the invited guest at the Great Commoner restaurant in Dearborn, Michigan. Albert Abbas says he extended that invitation, a decision he is now reflecting on, given all that has happened in the last 24 hours.
Many in the community are at a loss for words. Last night was a very rough night for most of us.
Abbas is Arab American and one of a number of Democrats who voted for Trump. Abbas says he hoped Trump would do more than President Joe Biden did to help Palestinians suffering in Gaza.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip.
But after Trump said Palestinians should leave Gaza so it can be redeveloped, Abbas says not only does he feel betrayed, he's hearing from a number of people angered over his past support of Trump.
People were really, really frustrated.
What's so insane to me is that the Democratic Party saw a 112% swing in this constituency to a guy who set the stage for October 7 to happen and to a guy who ran on doing the Muslim ban. Okay? Think about how unimaginably bad you dropped that ball. Okay? We say fell for it again award for many situations. This is one of the few instances where the Democrats basically pushed actively voters from this constituency directly to Donald Trump. Yeah, Donald Trump lied. No shit. I repeated this over and over and over again throughout the campaign, where I said Donald Trump got $100 million from Miriam Adelson. $100 million. If you think that he is going to be good for the Palestinians, you're wrong. As a matter of fact, the reason why he's going to be most likely worse for the Palestinians is because of their ambitions in the West Bank. Because American foreign policy is only uniparty, but it always tacks further to the right when Republicans are in charge. So they increase the brutality. Okay? I mentioned this time and time again on numerous occasions. But when one party is effectively controlling the pain and death and destruction as the administration in charge, and actively undermining this constituency by basically saying, we don't want you, we don't need you, we can win without you, to prove a point, okay? And the other party at least has the, I guess, audacity or the decency to lie. Yeah, the voters are going to understandably go with the party that's lying to them, with the hopes that that party that's lying to them is maybe telling the truth. Okay? That's it. This to me is not only a clear indication of the moral ineptitude, the immorality of the Democratic Party, but it also is a major indication of the awful ways in which the Democrats campaigned. If you lose to the Muslim ban guy, if you lose the Muslim vote to the Muslim ban guy, and you don't go back to the drawing board and go, how do we f up so hard? You want to lose. That's it. It's crazy. You will never understand the desperation that people have when they're seeing their family members be slaughtered on television, when they try to talk to them, and they're being blown to bits by American bombs that they paid for with their taxes. That's just something you will never be able to comprehend. By an administration that you voted for. That's another thing that you have to remember. By an administration that you voted for. And because you can't comprehend that feeling, because you will never be able to understand it, you can be callous in this moment. That's it. Don't do this. And I maintain this position as someone who also said that Donald Trump is most likely going to be worse than the administration prior. Even after the ceasefire negotiation was pushed for by Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, I maintain this position that they are most likely gearing up for permanent annexation of the West Bank. But you have to remember that you have to remember where this pain and where this hurt was coming from and who was responsible for it. The Democratic Party actively threw away the easiest gimme of all time. Kamala Harris actively ran towards Biden instead of running away from Biden. Not on just Gaza. Gaza is one issue. It's a significant one, but it's one issue. What is important about Gaza is that it demonstrates a couple things. Okay? It is a microcosm of the problem at the heart of the Democratic Party, which is their inability to listen to the actual voters, no matter how hard, no matter how loud those voters are yelling. Their inability to do the bidding of voters and doing everything they can to defend their benefactors, their corporate donors, their party boosters. Okay? This is it. They were willing and did throw away an election. They threw away an election when all signs and all data readily available showed that changing the trajectory and pushing for a ceasefire actively would most likely have seen at least a 6-point swing in some of the key states. Democrats did nothing because Trump was worse, and Trump won because Democrats did nothing. Yeah, it's that simple. A Harris campaign organizer says senior officials ordered them to erase voters who asked about Gaza, marking emails as no response so they'd be removed from outreach. No engagement, no persuasion, just ignored. The only clowns are the ones who decided to abdicate on this. We also didn't create a new category for Gaza response out of fear that that category would be leaked. Instead, we were told to mark them up as no response. The organizer said, faulting top Harris campaign leaders for failing to address the issue. The only clowns out there are those who were in senior leadership and decided to abdicate on this issue, who silenced the Palestinian speaker of the DNC, who told us to ignore it every time a voter asked us about Gaza. Like, this is a massive failure. Writing this off is throwing away tens of millions of dollars of work. Okay? Straight up. It's akin to lighting $10 million on fire. You understand? When someone goes and knocks on a door and has a direct back and forth, or someone calls someone, a voter, a potential voter, and has this back and forth, and they mark that as like, oh, unresponsive, throw it away, you're literally throwing data away. And you're doing that because you're afraid that if that data leaks, everyone will know the sinister truth, that you are avoiding this issue like the plague because you have donors up your asshole. Okay? That was the one aspect of the conversation that I had leading up to the election with the Podjons, where John Favreau basically told me in Michigan that they're getting a lot of calls from Jewish voters who are worried about Israel's, who are worried about the Democratic Party dropping Israel and defending Palestinians. I don't think that was real. I think he felt like he was pushed into a corner because I had actual data, and he just kind of said that. I maintain the position. Look, I have no love lost between me and the Podjons, but I think he basically came up with that on the spot. Okay, when we were having that conversation, because there is not a single piece of evidence that I've seen. And by the way, in the aftermath of the election, this demonstrably was a failure, regardless. But there's not a single piece of evidence that I've seen so far, including directly polling American Jews and their opinion on Israel, that said that Israel was the primary issue for them. The only people that Israel is a primary issue for are people that are already voting for the Republican Party. They voted for the Republican Party, and they're going to continue voting for the Republican Party. That's it. She sucked, but are you saying that people who didn't vote were right? It's a two-party system? No. I'm saying that people don't vote on harm reduction narratives. This has been a demonstrable failure now twice around, okay? At a certain point, you can't hope that the educated electorate is going to come out and respond to harm reduction narratives. That is not a way to launch successful campaigns. It has not worked. Ironically enough, in this circumstance, it's not like Kamala Harris was even advocating for harm reduction. On other aspects, maybe, but the harm reduction was packaged in a way where the Democrats were admitting that they were wrong and hypocritical. Like on the issue of the border, Democrats were advocating for a right-wing border bill that Republicans wrote that was basically Trump's agenda from 2020 that they successfully defeated on the issue of immigration. And that basically was an admission that they were wrong on immigration. Why the would anybody vote for you then? On the other hand, yeah, Trump wants to do mass deportations. Is that worse? Of course it is. Trump wanted to do mass deportations. Kamala Harris advocated for Donald Trump's policy from 2020, which is worse. Of course, mass deportation is worse. But in the eyes of the voters, they're not going to look at that and go, well, this is harm reduction. They're going to look at that and go, you said the border wall was racist for 8 years. You called me a Nazi. Now you want to build the border wall? Turns out your ineptitude is the reason why we have a border crisis to begin with. And now you're admitting that. Do you understand? That's it. You can't win elections like this. So I don't know why there are chatters in here. Okay. I don't understand why there are chatters in here who unironically, don't say admitting it's not true. I know, but it looks like they're admitting to fault. That's the point. I don't think it's correct, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the truth is. We're talking about how people vote. We're talking about how people respond to certain messaging. Do you understand? And look, there are plenty in this community, Michael from Pennsylvania, myself, we saw this from a mile away. I talked about how dangerous a gamble this was for Kamala Harris, running around with Liz Cheney over and over again, thinking that she's going to be able to carve out a constituency of white suburban moms that are going to carry her to the electoral victory. It was a failure. She drove away the base. Respond to certain messaging? You mean how you don't respond to genuine critiques? I hope the chatters can redirect this one lost chatter to a video where I have addressed 1 million times over the same exact false smears and clips out of context. Not to say that you actually care about the truth. I suspect you don't, because if you did, you could investigate on your own. Are you a man or a bot? Are you a man but a mere animal? That is the question you must ask yourself on this wonderful day. If you are a man that has the capability of independent thought, you should investigate on your own and go directly to the source material and try to figure out if things were clipped in 15-second increments, and maybe look at the longer clips on each individual issue that was addressed 1 million times over. I myself have talked about these points of view over and over again, these bad faith smears that I have received for the past 16 months because of my advocacy for Palestinians. There's a video out there on my YouTube page that you can watch called Ethan v. Hasan Piker, or Ethan Klein versus Hasan Explained, from 3 months ago, where I address a lot of the videos that Ethan put in his 1 hour and 40-minute nuke. If you're going to say the context is wrong and don't actually say that it was out of context, how about you actually explain the context? I have. You're demonstrating that you don't care. Here, I'll give you a quick example. This is just one. What did I do last time to fix my Twitter? It was broken again. Wait. Okay. What is happening? Let me turn off my Let me turn it off and turn it on again. Ay, 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 ay. Let's see if it works now. Cute ass dog in the background. She's sleeping. She's snoring. Just give up on political commentary and become a cam model at this point, bro. One, thank you for saying I have what it takes to be a cam model. And two, why would I do that? Here, Chatter was asking for how certain things are clipped out of context. Here, this is a great example.
Inbred douchebags in the background.
Like, these are just dudes standing back
nation
there.
entirely
Like,
comprised of messy.
And this is an ongoing like joke with this community. These are just benign dudes. Just I don't know what the fuck they're doing. It looks like they're doing charity or something. It looks like they've got water or box.
They're doing charity. Remember, by the way, this is a video that he quote unquote researched for months.
Or something, like they're helping, and he's going, "Oh, look at these inbred." So it's like, bro, who are you? What are you? Who are you? Like, how dare you?
Guys, the Israeli police is investigating the attack on the Gaza aid convoy.
Israeli security forces are paid to stop this happening. They either could not or would not, but clearly did not prevent Israeli settlers attacking an aid convoy yesterday. From the West Bank, bound for Gaza, where, say aid agencies, hundreds of thousands of civilians face famine.
But during the unloading and loading, settlers attacked these trucks, destroying the products and burning them in a systematic act of sabotage.
A continuation of images seen yesterday as settlers destroyed food at the same crossing point.
So, does that make sense? Do you understand now? Every single clip that he used, every single one is exactly like this. Coming from a place where I'm afraid to say the person making this content nuke is not necessarily knowledgeable on the matter and simply wanted to shit sling. I can't believe that Chatter derailed me this much. It's pretty crazy. And then he just left. It makes me sad that people come in and they're just like, I have no interest in hearing the truth whatsoever. And I'm simply here to talk shit and leave. Everyone is saying you're scared to debate Asmongold. It's true. I'm terrified. This is true. I'm legitimately worried. Legitimately scared. All right, let's get back to Arab Americans in Michigan react to President Trump.
United States, a community which helped Trump carry the critical swing state. He won 42% of the vote in Dearborn versus Vice President Harris with 36% and Jill Stein with 18%. In 2020, Biden handily carried the city with 69%. Faye Nimmer voted for Trump in 2024 out of frustration over the previous administration's support of Israel. Now, she is troubled by the president's proposal to move Palestinians out of Gaza.
I mean, it's very concerning and it's infuriating.
Personal feelings, you're infuriated, but standing by your decision for now to have voted for Trump.
Correct.
And what would move that needle for you to say, you know what, I made a mistake?
Palestine is the red line for this community.
Nimmer says she suspects Trump is bluffing and is using his proposal as some sort of negotiating tactic. That's the same sentiment shared by Amar Zar.
First, this is clearly not going to happen, right?
And real estate broker Ali Al-Farajala.
A lot of people are calling me and texting me saying, hey, you know, how did your vote work out? You know, how was that third party vote?
Both were so-called protest voters. Neither supported Trump or Harris. Are there any sort of second thoughts now about having supported a third-party candidate?
Absolutely not. And I'll still do it again and again and again.
I didn't vote for Trump. So a protest vote, I don't know. I would say it was a targeted vote of conscience to say that the children of Gaza have to mean something. Their death has to mean something.
And while Arab Americans here were divided in the past, going forward, one point is uniting them: opposition to Trump's proposal to move Palestinians out of Gaza.
The community will be unified. I will tell you this. The Palestinian people would rather die and live in a demolition site than to be ethnically cleansed and being sent out of Gaza to Egypt or Jordan.
So again, Anderson, after spending some time here in the Arab American community, you really get a sense that they feel like they've been let down by both Republicans and Democrats. Certainly there's a great deal a frustration
Yeah, I wonder
after
why they
hearing
feel
what
that
Trump
way.
is proposing, but there's also a feeling that had Harris been elected, had it been a Harris administration, the feeling here is that Palestinians would still be suffering. Anderson?
Just Carol, thanks very much. And Dearborn with me now. Put some numbers to the story. CNN senior data reporter Harry Enton. Generally speaking, has there been much an appetite in the U.S. for to get involved in rebuilding Gaza?
No, there has not been. Look, we have no new polling since last night, right? Polling works fast. It doesn't work that fast. But in the polling that we had prior, that was taken towards the middle end of last year, what we saw was the overwhelming majority of Americans opposed the idea that the United States should take a lead role in reconstructing Gaza. You could see it right there, 57% opposed, just 37% support. And what I should note is the support was lowest among Trump's own base of Republicans. So the idea that this is going to sell among the American people at large or the Republican base, simply put, he definitely wasn't looking at the polls before he went out there and made a statement that was heard around the world because of how crazy it sounded to most people.
How did Palestinians view President Trump during his first administration?
Yeah, so we talk about Americans, right? But at the end of the day, the Gaza Strip is filled with Palestinians, right? So the question is, how did Palestinians feel about Donald Trump during his first term? And the bottom line is they absolutely disapproved of his leadership. I mean, you rarely see numbers like this. Look at this. 78% during his first term disapproved of his leadership. Just 10% approved of it. And I even drilled down a little bit more because I love going into those crosstabs. And what I found was approval, or at least disapproval among Gazans, was even higher. The disapproval among Gazans was.
In my opinion, we owe it to the Palestinians to pay for rebuilding Palestine to the last penny. I agree. Except Trump doesn't want to rebuild Palestine. He wants to ethnically displace it first and then build condominiums on what is the Gaza Strip. It's the worst of both worlds.
Was even higher than it was among Palestinians overall. So simply put, this would not be a popular plan either in America or in the Palestinian territories.
We are finally putting America first. Our policy of
Totally. I love putting America first.
ending war, regime change and nation building is being replaced by the clear-eyed pursuit of American interests. We do not seek nation building. We're going to end the era of nation building, a disastrous concept, a disastrous era. Why are we nation building over there? We want a nation build over here.
When President Donald Trump first entered politics nearly a decade ago, he did so with promises of putting an end to nation building and removing the U.S. from foreign entanglements in the Middle East. But now he's, of course, said that he has a new plan to redevelop the Gaza Strip. Or as his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, put it, quote, make Gaza beautiful again. Rubio clarifying some of the details of the president's proposal yesterday.
The only thing President Trump has done very generously, in my view, is offer the United States willingness to step in, clear the debris, clean the place up.
As the Israel's defense minister readies its military for the, quote, voluntary departure, end quote, of Palestinians from Gaza, one thing that's clear, President Trump and his plan have the full support of his Israeli counterpart, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
This is the first good idea that I've heard. It's a remarkable idea. And I think it should be really pursued, examined, pursued, and done, because I think it will create a different future for everyone. He's the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House.
All right, joining us now, former Chief of Staff to Benjamin Netanyahu, George Birnbaum. Sir, good morning. Thank you very much for spending some time with us today.
Good morning, Casey.
I'd like to start with the meeting itself, and especially the look on the Prime Minister's face there, as well as some reporting that he was as surprised by this as almost anyone. The New York Times wrote this, quote, it wasn't only the Americans who were scrambling after the press conference. The announcement came just as much of a surprise to Mr. Trump's Israeli visitors. Soon before they walked out for their joint news conference on Tuesday, Mr. Trump surprised Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel by telling him he planned to announce the Gaza ownership idea, according to two people briefed on their interactions. You've obviously worked closely with Netanyahu. What did you read into his reaction, and how surprised was he?
Well, I would say this. Netanyahu is a very astute follower of political chess. And we saw a few announcements prior to the prime minister's arrival that were a little strange. One was the announcement that the King of Jordan would be coming to visit the White House in a couple of weeks. And while, with all respect to the King of Jordan, I could think of 24 world leaders that the president.
Trump doesn't care about polls anymore, and why would he? He has no more elections and doesn't care about the GOP. Hitler was also an anti-war candidate. A lot of policies were initially unpopular. No, Trump cares about popularity. You're wrong about that. I think he is, for selfish reasons, for narcissistic reasons, but reasons nonetheless, Donald Trump absolutely cares about being popular. In a very weird way, it has nothing to do with the election. I don't even think Donald Trump cared about winning the election the first time around. He just kind of lucked into it. And then the second time around, he had to do it out of desperation because he was worried about going to jail. He literally said he wanted to ban TikTok in his first term, and then now is known as the savior of TikTok. Why do you think that happened? You're such a leftist joke. Leftists don't joke, my friend. Yeah, how can you live through a decade of Donald Trump in politics and arrive at the conclusion I don't think he really cares about polling? I will say this much. Yeah, also, this dude has cuck in his name, which is kind of funny. I will say this much. I think Donald Trump, in a weird way, cares more about broad popularity and polling than like the average technocratic Democrat does. Now, having said that, are there things that he does that are deeply unpopular? Abso-frickin-lutely, right? I'll give you one great example of this. Donald Trump's reaction to the abortion ban once Roe v. Wade was overturned by his Supreme Court was very different than the way he was advocating for it beforehand. If given the opportunity, I'm fairly certain he would not have ever allowed that to happen. It's even more sinister that CNN has been talking about this nonstop for the past couple of days while they were dead silent when Israel was openly committing genocide and war crimes in Gaza. Yeah, because, anti-Trump hits get clicks. Anyway, what I was saying is he cares about popularity, but he'll say deeply unpopular things, especially when there's money to be made for himself or others. He'll still try to present it as the popular option, though.
Would invite to the White House prior to the King of Jordan. We also saw the announcement of a very unique arms sale to Egypt just a day prior to the prime minister arriving. Of course, Egypt and Jordan being two key players in President Trump's plan. So the prime minister may have been surprised that the announcement came so quickly, but I believe that he probably was reading the tea leaves a little bit and that President Trump did have something in mind by having these two very strange events occur so early into his presidency regarding the invitation of the King of Jordan, as well as the arms sale to Egypt.
President Trump's Gaza plan is also upsetting some of the Arab Americans who voted for him. A number of those voters are in Dearborn, Michigan, the city with the highest percentage of Arab Americans in the U.S. They flipped to Trump in 2024, partly to protest President Biden's handling of the crisis in Gaza. Nikki Batiste asked people there how they are feeling now.
What do you think your headline will be this week?
Gazans will not leave their country.
I think something that, yes, I hear the buzzing too, or the tinnitus noise. I think something that American leadership discounts, which is leading them to make wrong decisions when figuring out how to go forward with this Gaza situation, is how unimaginably unpopular it would be with the actual citizens in these countries. If it were up to MBS and he had full control, if he had a magic wand, he would make all of the Palestinians perish. But the reason why the official Saudi position is that it is a non-starter to do mass ethnic displacement for the Palestinians. The reason why that is the official Saudi position, despite MBS's own personal distaste for the Palestinian plight, is because even in a place like Saudi Arabia, where the numbers of the population are very limited, no matter how many weapons you give MBS, he still has a very real fear of being potentially overthrown by his own population. Okay? Same with Egypt. If MBS were to basically say, I don't really care, go ahead, we're normalizing with Israel, okay? There's a likelihood that he get assassinated by an immediate family member even. MBS doesn't have an election to win? Yes. In countries where they don't have American-style theoretical democracy, they do things a little differently, okay? This is one of those issues where enough members of the public would absolutely make a big enough stink and try to actively overthrow their rulers. Okay? Do you understand? They just kind of killed the leaders, Lamau. Just look at Sadat in Egypt as an example. I'm saying that authoritarian countries have more to fear from genuine rebellion than democratic countries do. Because a theoretical democracy offers an opportunity, even if it's just simply the feeling of having political power in the form of your vote, it gives you a pressure valve. Authoritarian countries fear rebellion more than democratic countries do. Okay? That's where it actually happens. When there is no alternative in the eyes of the population and the government takes action that is so disastrous, so immoral, so repugnant that they can't stand idly by, they will revolt. The only way to maintain a docile population in an authoritarian country, because there is always a limit to how long authoritarian regimes can exist. The only way to continue operating with mechanisms of control is if you're constantly abiding by the best wishes and the broader public sentiment. They underestimate the prevalence of pan-Arab sentiment in the MENA region. My grandpa was a Saudi general who tried to coup the royals with the first set of normalization in the 70s. Failed, obviously, lol. Anyway.
Thomas Sablani's Arab American newspaper has shared the stories of the country's largest Arab community for 40 years.
We have expected from Donald Trump the worst, but he is shocking us of how worse he can be.
Here in Dearborn, Michigan, the Democrat usually wins, but last November, President Trump captured more than 40% of the vote to Vice President Harris's 36%. Part of her loss was due to people not voting for either major party. Sablani says he didn't vote for anyone, but blames Democratic candidates for the rare results.
The vote for...
I will never get over how easy it would have been for Biden to actually reverse course on Gaza. One phone call, proven by Steve Witkoff, going and telling Benjamin Netanyahu to cut it out, and then Benjamin Netanyahu actually cutting it out. And yet he chose not to do so, even though there was a severe electoral consequence there. It's crazy. Remember when Joe Biden said he had a red line when Israel decided to do the complete final solution on North Gaza with the hopes of permanent annexation of North Gaza? Biden said, "Oh, I'm going to give you a red line, Jack." He gave another red line on Rafah. We all know how that turned out. But the second time was even funnier because he gave him 30 days, which was after the election. And then, of course, he did not abide by the red line. Israel never followed through, and Biden kept giving him more weapons and rewarding him all the way till the last day. His State Department ran propaganda for Israel. I did not forget. If they were truly worried about Donald Trump up the situation, if they truly cared about the plight of Gazans, they could have wrapped this shit up ever before it reached Trump's desk. Okay? They handed over the reins to Donald Trump with no care or consideration for Palestinians whatsoever because they don't care. It's that simple. There's no reason to dance around this issue. And many liberals are pretty open. I was told by a prominent liberal streamer today that the Rafah red line was an example of Biden saving the day, giving people time to leave Rafah. Oh my God. This doesn't make sense even in like their own moral system. Okay, even in the world that they've invented where Biden somehow has the power to halt this, give a stay of execution, but also can't stop the execution in its entirety. You know what I mean? It's just so crazy. It's just wrong. I don't know how else to describe it other than purely wrong, you know? I think a lot of liberals, just like a lot of Republicans do, they just want to hear someone with similar opinions, you know? They just want someone to whisper sweet nothing into their ears. They want basically to feel like they're morally righteous, even when all signs point to the fact that they're not. And they want to do that by doing the bare minimum, which is going out and voting. They think it's the most, it is the most moral position. It's the highest form of political activism that one can partake in. It's the first step. Kaya. They didn't care if they lose either, as long as they can profit off campaigning against Trump. They're earning money anyway. Yeah.
For Trump was not really a vote for Trump. It's a vote against the Biden-Harris administration because they could not stop the carnage that's happening in Gaza.
If you were to give President Trump a grade for how he's handling Gaza, Middle East, what would it be?
I would say like a C+.
College senior Sarah Shaban voted for Trump. She says she gasped when she saw his remarks.
Insane to yap for hours about how much genocide Joe sucks when we can't change the past, but you can say I told you so. Meanwhile, Trump just called for ethnic cleansing and there's still shit that can be done to stop him. I mean, there's even less shit that can be done to stop Donald Trump than there was for Biden. So no, I think covering Biden's ineptitude on this issue is still fairly important to understand. You know what I mean? Like this was happening during an election, man. There is no clear indication that America does not give a single shred of a about democracy than not responding to the public pressure, major demonstrations, and only responding by telling everybody that they were Hamas supporters and that they were maybe being funded by Iran, and then also arresting 3,100 college campus demonstrators. Like, that is crazy. Those numbers are insane. They rarely got coverage in the media, but I have not forgotten, and neither should you. A couple of years from now, when you wonder how we got here, remember that the Democrats also were actively pushing to get here. My favorite thing about this whole situation as a Palestinian is that the party collectively told me and all of mine to go f ourselves nonstop, ran a dog shit campaign where they told us they were going to win without us, and we didn't matter, and now turn around and reveal the Klan hoods they had hidden the entire time. I mean, did they hide the Klan hoods? They literally said, we'll win without you, and also that we're going to keep killing your relatives. So one could say that they were wearing the Klan hoods all along pretty openly. Now they just try to act like they weren't wearing the Klan hoods, but now you forced me to wear the Klan hood, when in fact they were wearing it last time around too. You know? They were always wearing it. Now they're saying, now you done did it. You forced my hand. You got what you wished for. And it's like, well, you didn't. You were fine with this happening when you were in charge. And now that you're out of power, you're still fine with it. Nothing really changed. I don't know why you also want this kind of like moral abdication. You want to be freed. You want to feel like you did your very best when we saw you not doing that.
I was disappointed, but I also wasn't surprised. But I would say that I kind of find it hard to believe that he would actually implement what he's saying.
Did you regret voting for him?
A little bit, yeah. But then I thought about it and I was like, there's a ceasefire now, and I wasn't sure there was going to be a ceasefire if Kamala was elected.
Trump became the first Republican presidential candidate to win this city in more than 2 decades.
Amichai Stein, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to Channel 14. The Saudis can create a Palestinian state in Saudi Arabia. They have lots of land over there. I guess the Saudi normalization is not looking too good. What's your prediction? Do you think Trump will follow this at all? I mean, there's no reason to assume that Donald Trump is not going to actively try to do what he promised that he's going to do. Think about it. Think about it with respect to virtually everything. It was like, oh, Project 2025. Oh, that's not real. I don't know what that is. I don't know how to read. And then they fucking turn around. And then they turn around and they're like, okay, we're doing Project 2025 to a T. We're doing exactly the things that were in Project 2025. When they say they're going to do something, it's a matter of how much resistance will undermine their goals. That's it.
Decades. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who represents Dearborn and is the only Palestinian American in Congress, blasted Trump's comments and said Palestinians aren't going anywhere. Vlad?
All right, Nikki, thank you very much.
Across the country today, demonstrators took to the streets, part of a movement billed as 50 protests.
God. I don't know what's wrong with my goddamn computer, dude. It is so busted. My pooter. I am aware that my camera is really far up. Why are chatters so brain dead to this reality? A solid 5,000 kids probably got blown off when Joe dropped out and Kamala ran on the Democratic ticket. He looks like the peaceful guy, even though he's not to the normies across the nation. Kamala and DNC fucked up the easiest presidential layup of all time. Didn't they find metadata from Project 2025 author on recent files from the White House? Yeah, I mean, it is a part of the same organizing unit, okay? It is the same body. There is no difference functionally between Project 2025 and the Republican Party's agenda. It is one of the same. And it always has been. And it's not new. It's not a new project. Yeah, Project 2025's co-author was just confirmed by the Senate as OMB head, was the tweet. Yeah. Here it is. Senate confirms Project 2025 architect to head the Office of Management and Budget. So that's the way I see it with respect to Donald Trump and his ambitions in Gaza. When he says he's going to do something, it's a matter of how much of a stink people can put in front of that. How much mass mobilization will occur? How much the Democrats will try to just throw procedural hurdles in the way? That's it. It's not a matter of like, will Trump do it if left on his own? The answer is yes.